Okay, good afternoon. It is 5:30. We'll call this a special meeting to order. Board of Trustees special meeting and annual team of 8 training for the Board of Trustees of Midland Independent School District will attend the following meeting on February 6th, beginning at 5:30 p.m. at the Chamber of Commerce, Boardroom 303, West Wall, Suite 200, Midland, Texas 79701. The subjects to be discussed or considered are listed below. The items do not have to be taken in the same order as shown on this meeting notice. Then agenda item number 2, public forum participants must register to speak in person 5 minutes before the meeting begins on the day of the meeting. Agenda item number 2, verification of compliance with open meetings law. This is to certify that the provisions of section 551.001 of the Texas Government Code have been met in connection with the public notice of this meeting. Do we have any public comments? Ms. McNabb, do we have any public comments?
No, sir.
Thank you. We'll move to agenda item number 4, superintendent update. Dr. Howard.
Yes, so thank you all for being here this evening. Just a few updates. We just met a couple of weeks ago, but on Friday we exceeded 28,000 students. I said 28,811. We also have had some really good trainings the last week or so. We had a leadership training this morning, and Dee Carney was here. Dee is an accountability guru and expert across the state, and she was here doing accountability training for our district and campus leaders. Shared some information with us that was very interesting. The state has started moving to automated scoring of written responses. And so in December of 22, 8% of 100,000-ish students across the state scored a 0 on the open-ended responses. And in December of 23, when they started automated scoring, 80% of 90,000 students scored a 0. So they are definitely working and in contact with the agency to see what's going on with that. English teachers learned about it at the state ELAR conference last week, and we're not happy. And so I expect that'll get quite a bit of traction across the state. We want to congratulate, and we'll bring them to the board in March, or maybe next week for that matter, the Mariachi Band from Legacy High School. Not only qualified for state in their first year, but had perfect scores. And so that's quite an accomplishment. They'll be performing in Seguin in a couple of weeks. And then our purchasing department had an award of merit from the Texas School Business Officials. Henderson Principal was named the Texas Elementary Region 18 Principal of the Year, Maxine. And then on Saturday, well, I think last Thursday and Saturday, we had Teach Like a Champion. Do you know how many people were trained over those 2 days? 150? About 150 of our instructional leaders. And then tomorrow, between the 2 high schools, we'll be signing 22 student athletes to compete and continue their education at the next level. So a lot of really good things happening. I'm excited for those student athletes that are going to be able to move into the college level and get an education while continuing their extracurriculars. That's all I have.
Thank you. Agenda item number 5, we have the consent agenda. 5A is a resolution allowing for adjunct 4-H teachers. Pardon me?
Okay. I'm moved to approve.
Mr. Joyner moved to approve. Ms. Burleson, second. All those in favor by raising your right hand. Unanimous. Just for the record, Mr. Marcus is not here today, but I think, is he online?
Who's running technology? He has a link to connect.
Stuck in traffic, so he doesn't know if he can.
Who?
Mr. Marquez,
He's stuck in traffic.
stuck in traffic.
If at some point he wants to join, we just need to know because he has to be displayed.
Yeah.
So don't let him join and not be up there.
He
So we'll
was,
mark him as absent for now and count that vote as 6-0, and then
Yes,
he'll
that's-
let us know if he logs off.
no, it's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 6, district report on board goals and strategic plan. Dr. Howard, Mr. Cedillo, and Ms. Osborne.
Yes, and I think, we were talking to Mike too, I think we'll kind of be in this area when we're presenting, and so, we'll move to that area, and when Mike does his part, he can certainly do that. That way the camera can see everyone. But we had talked last month about revisiting our board goals, goal progress measures and constraints. Now that we have baseline data with the new assessment, baseline data with the new accountability system, and then pushing those goals out to establish 5-year goals rather than trying to work through another 2 years of what may or may not be the best way to approach it when we think about a new accountability system. So you've heard me say this before, but I truly believe that this work is what all great school districts do, regardless of ever entering into Lone Star governance or being required to do this, or, you know, from time to time deciding to operate this way. And so establishing goals that we're working towards, we're all on the same page with that, and then goal progress measures that help us monitor along the way on an ongoing basis, how are we doing? So we don't get to the end of the year and have surprises. I do want to thank our team. Ashley led this work, and a lot of what you're going to see tonight, her team and these people sitting around the room help pull together. We talk about being a data-driven organization, but one of the things we've really discovered is we can have all the data in the world, but what do we do with it? And so back on January the 19th, this team, we were in about a 4.5-hour work session where we looked at all mid-year data. And not only looked at the data, but each owner of that data shared what they were, why they thought it looked that way and what they were doing about it. And so that's the most important thing. We can have the data, but if we don't have a plan for how we're going to respond and react to that data, whether we like it or we don't like the data, we have to do something different because of what we're seeing. And so we'll take you through this tonight. Oh, clicker. Here is the virtual agenda. Of course, we got ready to click. I realized I didn't have it. Okay, so these are the current board goals. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are currently green check marked, if you will. They're headed in the right direction. We showed here while we measured those first 2 goals at the meets grade level. We also show at the bottom, just for reference, what the approaches is, which is what TEA considers passing compared to state average, as well as our meets grade level at the state level. On 3 and 4, those are about growth. You're going to see what we're proposing is going to be much more comprehensive in that area. And then goal 5 is a 4-year graduation rate. House Bill 3 back in 2019 said that boards needed to have goals around early literacy, early math, and CCMR. And we do not currently have a CCMR goal, so we'll talk a little bit about that as we move forward. So why would we be updating the goals? And so when we think about 1, I already referenced the House Bill 3 requirement back in 2019 that we measure early childhood literacy and math and then CCMR. Also, we have an accountability A through F refresh, and because of that, there's some different things we need to be looking at, measuring, and how we measure it needs to change. 3, understanding assessment instruments. So most of us were not here when these original goals, and more importantly, the GPMs were written. And so to make sure that we're looking at the best source of data to measure the progress towards the goals. So the CLI Engage, STAR 2.0, and then of course NWEA Math. Also, we have STAR 2.0. Those are new question types. So what used to be a reading test is now, it also has an integrated writing assessment in that assessment. So it's an ELAR test, no longer just a reading test. And then of course, new question types. And then metrics to watch, so areas of focus for the Board of Trustees and us. And so being comprehensive in what we're monitoring and what we're looking for to see on an ongoing basis how we're doing and where we need to make adjustments. And this is a workshop, so if you have a question at some point, just stop us and ask. It's probably easier to talk about it right there. So the way that Ashley laid these out, I think it's very easy to look at. One of the things that was important to us is that we weren't going backwards anywhere where it didn't make sense, and there was a reason to do that. So number one is about third grade students scoring at the meets grade level performance. And so the way it was written, it talked about demonstrated grade level mastery. Well, first of all, the assessment is written above grade level, and secondly, meets grade level is a score that could change at any time. So this is about meeting grade level performance. Our baseline this past year was 41. The original baseline was 36, and we're recommending pushing that from 41 to 55 by 2028. We've also sourced the data. One thing that our team found as we were trying to work through this process the last year is we didn't always know where a number came from that had been referenced from 2-3 years ago. And so sourcing the data helps us to know what data source we're looking at when we're measuring this information. And then you can see there the annual target. So baseline year of 2023, and then what the goal is to get to that 55, kind of building that out over the next 5 years. Number 2 is the same thing, same types of revision math. So the baseline was 32, the new baseline is 38, and the goal is to get to 50. You'll notice that both the 55 and the 50 are above state average as it sits today. We have no way of knowing what state average will be in 5 years, but both of the end goals are above state average. And then again, those annual targets break down how we will work to get there. Goals 3 and 4 are around growth. One of the things in our current goals is we're only monitoring that 4th through 8th grade, and we recommend monitoring 4th through English 2. So that we're looking at all students in the ELAR area. And then also we rephrased that. It did say accelerate their progress measure, and so we rephrased that to STAR annual growth, which is the language that the state uses. Our original baseline was 55. We're actually at 55, and we're proposing 65. And the rationale there is because of how growth is calculated. We really don't know where the 80 came from because state average is in the 60s. So even back when we look at the year that this would have been set, we're not sure where the 80 came from because that's not a, well, for one, the way the taper reports it, they report by grade level and they report all subjects tested. Well, we were excluding some of the subjects, so we were having to hand calculate some of those numbers.
A quick question. On the 1 and 2 says STAR meets grade level performance, and then we go up to 4 through English 2, and we just say exceed their annual growth. So is that a different measurement?
So number 1 and 2 are about meets grade level, which is the achievement part of accountability, so domain 1. And then goals 3 and 4 are about growth, which is domain 2. Good question.
I have a real simple question. On the BL right here, what does that stand for? Is that bilingual?
Baseline.
Baseline?
Yes,
Okay.
Is there a reason why we're doing domain 1 on one and domain 2 on the other? I'm sure there is.
So 1 and 2, goal 1 and 2, those two goals are good things to measure, but they're also required by House Bill 2019, or House Bill 3 written in, or adopted in 2019. 3 and 4 are about looking at that annual growth. So when we think about accountability, they take the better of domain 1 or 2. And so we can grow our way into being a better district, but we will never be a high-performing district without achievement. And so 1 and 2 are about achievement, 3 and 4 are about growth on an annual basis. And growth is different now with the new accountability system. Used to, you had to hit a certain number. Now you have to bump from to a different level on the, I don't know if you're showing that chart.
I don't
But Ashley can probably explain that even better than I can. But they are measuring growth differently this past year than they have in the past. That was one of the big pieces of why there was the lawsuit, because that was a big thing that changed after the fact. And then goal 5, this is the graduation rate. We did some clarification here, 4-year longitudinal. What that means is a student enters 9th grade and in 4 years they graduate. If you go to the taper, there's a 4-year graduation rate, a 5-year graduation rate, a state graduation rate, and a federal graduation rate. And we think it's important to just know how many students do we get from 9th grade to senior graduation in 4 years. And so just simplify it, but we wanted to clarify that language. The baseline here is the class of 2022, that was 86.8. The state average was 89.7. This number took a hit across the state. That was the year coming out of COVID. So thinking about students who are behind in credits and grades and all of that before COVID. And then, you know, with a lot of online classwork and coursework, they either got further behind or maybe didn't even come back to school. And we do see that trend across the state.
I have a question. So we're looking at growing 1 percentage point a year on this one and board goals 1 and 2. Well, not 1. We're growing at a faster rate in 1 in achievement than we are in 2. Well, maybe they're similar in 1 and 2. I guess what I'm wondering is, do we think that these are pushed, like this graduation rate, growing 1% a year, is that enough of a push goal to really accelerate our graduation rate?
So the 90 is.
1% doesn't feel like a lot, I
Sure,
know, but.
yeah. So I see what you're saying. The state average for the class of 2022 was 89.7, not at 90%. So that was the thinking at hitting the 90%. I know Shannon gave me the number today and it was 80,
I just need to look and see what I
I
texted.
think 89 is what he told me.
What's 89?
What we're projecting for the class of 2023.
89.4 is what
So
we're
if
projecting.
we're at 89.4 already for the class of 2023, why are we?
That's
aiming-
unofficial, they haven't
Well,
walked the stage.
Right, correct. But if we believe that to be true in this planning process, I don't know why we would only be aiming for 90% by 2028.
Right.
If we're at 90, I mean, I have a hard time looking at the community and saying, yeah, we're gonna grow 1% a year, or at least that's our goal. Like, that may be what actually happens.
Right.
But I want to know that we're pushing it, because if we're at 89.4, that's fabulous. Let's move
Let us
the
look
needle.
too, let us go back before the class of 22, because that's when the state took a nosedive. Let us go back and look at what state average was before that happened, and then think about what those targets might be.
Okay, I just wanna make sure that we're at the edge
Right,
of what we're capable of, not kind of lower,
right,
with a foreseeable yes.
absolutely.
I think because of 2022 was the first class that was fully affected by COVID.
Yeah.
We may see those numbers go back up.
Right.
And so I've got, I agree, and the other people need to.
I think it's
Yeah.
also, and the other thing that's important to point out on goal 5 is this is really a 4-year goal.
Right.
Because 2024 is the current group of
Right,
students. Yeah.
I understand what you're saying about
Yeah.
that, and I do agree that messes with the mentality of what the growth looks
Right.
like from year to year. But just making sure that we, like I said, are not kind of
Setting the
at the
bar too low.
status that we
Yeah.
currently are growing. We want to grow faster
Right.
than the growth rate right now.
Right.
And that's kind of how I see 1 and 2 a little bit as well. Because it looks like we're stair stepping by 3s.
On
and
which
then
one?
The first goal, we're growing by 3 percentage points a year. And then on the second goal, we're growing by 2, 3, 3, 3.
Yeah,
So
So
just making sure that
yeah,
if our baseline moved from 2023, our actual was 41 in goal 1. The state average was 48. And then what I would be curious to know is what we were in 2022, what the clip was that we were, because I know we've progressed. I don't think we did, if
no,
I'm remembering correctly. what I'm curious about is what those percentage points were that we picked up as we got to 41. Does
I
that make
think
sense?
what's difficult to measure side by side is we have new curriculum,
And then new
so that's
accountability.
different,
Yeah.
and a new accountability
New
system,
start.
and a new start test.
Right.
And so it's hard to compare those two
And
apples
say we're
to
gonna make that
apples.
same growth
Yeah.
with those different metrics,
Right.
okay? But we feel like, again, Brian and I have talked quite a bit about making sure we have push goals, like
Sure.
to where we're not kind of growing at the same rate every
And,
year.
and I'll be very honest, you know, our goal is in 5 years, we're gonna be pushing for that in a year.
Right.
I mean, we're not gonna say, oh, we got 5 years, let's take a break
I guess
for
that's
4.
my point, is are we setting a goal to where we have push?
Right, no.
No,
Okay.
and you'll see that we have even pushed beyond what the original
Goal was, right, I did notice that on several of them.
Is there a way that we can, is we're pushing for graduation rates to increase, is there a way that we can check that and correlate to make sure that the increase in graduation rate isn't decreasing the TSI rate, or like we're making sure that we're graduating people in 4 years that are college ready, or they're
You're gonna
pursuing-
see that in the goal progress measures, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we don't wanna just graduate them, we want to graduate them prepared for college and career.
And that's, yeah, that's why we're
Yeah.
proposing.
And so, we had a lot of discussion, because the initial thinking was, you know, we have 5 goals, we need 5 goals, so we should do away with goal 5, because really it's supposed to be a CCMR goal. But we talked about one of the metrics of a successful district is how are we graduating students? Are we graduating them prepared and ready to move on? So we're proposing 6 goals to bring in that CCMR goal that's required by House Bill 3.
Dr. Howard, Mr. Marcus is on, he's joining us.
We
Can technology get him on the screen?
could, I don't know where Jarvis is, could we maybe just call for a 5-minute recess so we can get him, we need him to be live? if
Yeah,
he's
that's
here.
what we'll just wait.
I moved to recess
Yep.
for 5
Okay,
minutes.
we got a move, second by Mr. Booker, first by Mr. Jones. All those in favor, by raising your right hand. Thank you. Unanimous.
That's the easiest one.
We've got to project him, which is gonna be hard in this room. Does he have to be projected, or can it be on a monitor?
He's just on a laptop.
We need to be able to see his face in this room.
So he's got to.
Is there a way that we can get his image on this screen so that the board members can see his face live?
Nothing like being on.
Mr. Becker. Is he sick? I'm glad he didn't. No. Thank you. Like, we just can't have it. Can't have it down here. It's a show.
I don't want to go there and leave.
There's too many of us here that are important to the district. We can go down.
Yeah. Yeah, just stay on the college.
Yeah. After that one night, when I made him go sit on the other side of the room for exec.
Say what now?
When we made him go sit on the other side. He's had a tough go of it.
You might be, give him some type of vitamin, so use it.
No, I'm about to buy him some echinacea and drop it on his tongue. I take that every day. Yeah. Living on the edge.
And then, do y'all need him to stay home again?
Yes.
Are y'all both?
Yes, on the entire meeting.
Okay.
You know that new bar that's downstairs.
So should have just got an invite.
Hard copy, so I'll keep going. So board goal 6 is a proposed new goal. That's the one about CCMR. But we have to remember about the goal 5 and 6, those are lagging indicators. So we also put some clarification here, what class of we're referring to. So 54% was the CCMR rate for the class of 2022. And in 2023, class of 2023, so the 24 annual target was 72%. And then we've built the, what I would call a 4-year goal because of the lagging indicator for the class of 27 to be at 83% CCMR met. So these are the goals, just all on one pager. We'll look at that goal number 5 and make sure that we're setting a good stretch goal there related to graduation rate. Is there any other feedback on 1, 2, 3, 4, or 6? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Ashley to talk about the goal progress measures that we'll measure on an ongoing basis to see how we're doing throughout the year and make adjustments as we go.
Okay, so as a result of updating the board goals, obviously then we need to address our goal progress measures. And as you all know, these are the metrics that we're going to continue to monitor that we believe contribute to achieving that overall board goal. So they are important to keep top of mind throughout the school year. Yes.
Sorry, I should let you finish that thought, but when we talk about meets grade level performance or above, are we accounting, are we counting master's kids in that number when we
Yes.
talk about the meets?
Meets or better.
Meets are better, okay. But it is included in the number, okay.
Yes. So for goal 1, we're proposing 4 goal progress measures. We've updated the 3 that were existing, and then we're proposing to add an additional goal progress measure for your consideration. So we'll just kind of run down each of the goal progress measures and then interject if you have questions or need clarification. So for goal progress measure 1.1, we've updated it to explicitly name the instrument that we will use. And we've also specified that we're measuring that phonological awareness. It's important to recall that these are for our pre-K students, and as we expand our pre-K opportunities, we will expect for the annual target to increase. But we still recognize that these seats currently are limited, and until we have that grade reconfiguration, pulling in many more pre-K 3-year-olds probably will not happen until we have that full grade reconfiguration in 2028. Also recognizing that students, when they enter pre-K, they likely will not have a great foundation in phonological awareness, so it is our pre-K teachers that have to put in the work to get them there at the end. And so we will measure that with this first GPM. 1.2, and the rates are from current 86% to 89% in the year 2028.
So we're baselining at 23, year 23 at 86%, and then we're projecting for 2024, 86%. I mean, that to me seems like we should be aiming higher for, again, I mean, I just, the 1 year growth and then not even any growth in
25, 26.
chronological. Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. In 25 and 26, that we're gonna remain the same. I think we need to stretch more there.
I think I asked that question, and the
Why are we
answer
staying
I
the
got
same?
was that was a pretty standard percentage that we see, and our pre-K people are back there nodding. That's a pretty standard number to see. You could say 93 and that may never happen. So when y'all mind if they speak to that?
students every year?
Yes.
Yes, that is a big piece is with getting new students every year, but then additionally, the previous GPM was only at 82%. So last year, we did exceed that and got to 86. So we've already come in so much higher than we were. And then whenever you look at a classroom of 22 students, you're counting how many in that individual class meet this
Right,
GPM.
the standard.
And then these GPMs are tied directly to TIA as well. And so we have to ensure that our teachers still have adequate opportunity to earn those designations as well.
I hear what you're saying about the TIA and incentivizing our teachers, but the honest to God truth is that we grew from 82 to 86 in 1 year. And we are going, as you point out, to continue to get new students every year, but we also should be getting better at our craft and holding our teachers to a higher standard. I mean, I don't think, if you're gonna grow 1% a year, you need to at least grow from 87 to 88 to 89 to 90, is the way I look at it, because yes, that's standard, but we're trying to do better than where we have been. And we also know that if
And
we
then,
don't get.
so you're suggesting sort of increase a percentage point each year, but then hitting a topping out essentially?
Right, because if you have 90% of your pre-K students that have this awareness by the time they come into kinder, then you are gonna see much better scores in 3rd grade.
Absolutely.
But if we are only projecting to grow 1 point a year, and we're not, and we know that we already grew 4 points in 1 year last year, then why wouldn't we want to have kind of a top of the mark sooner rather than later? Does that make sense? Because you know it directly correlates to the overall board goal. And maybe that's the
Can I-
misinformed thinking.
Can I ask one question? Did we grow from 82 to 86 because we changed curriculum this year?
The curriculum remained the same, but last year, whenever we had set the 82%, it was the first year that we were measuring everything that was being measured on the assessment for the overall phonological awareness. If you remember, in the past, we only measured letter sounds, but we knew that that was only measuring one
One
skill
thing.
that a student
Yeah.
would need to have. So we expanded everything we were testing and set that 82%. And then we were very excited, but also surprised that we did exceed it by 4 percentage points. Another piece with our pre-K students is they often come into us, and then we realize how much they have not seen a doctor or gotten outside consultant or observations for speech therapy,
Right.
for any kind of special services. And so we're testing and measuring all of those students, some of which come in and you cannot understand anything that they say. And the CLI assessment is given one-on-one where I have my computer sitting next to the 4-year-old and I'm giving that assessment and they're feeding back to me all of their answers verbally, sometimes pointing depending on the assessment. So if you're unable to understand exactly what they're trying to say to you, then you're really not able to give them credit for getting that.
I understand where
Can
Katie's
you
driving.
speak to why you came up with these numbers?
Yes, so whenever we take the 89%, if we just kind of round out to say 1,000 4-year-olds that have come into us with no previous knowledge. Also, we know that a lot of times with phonological awareness specifically, that is not where our parents have strength in teaching their students at home. With the games and the TV shows that our little ones see before they come to us, those are generally math-based. And so our math goal is much higher, which you'll see here in just a little bit, that we do keep that one pretty high, but this one, our students come into pre-K without as much background knowledge. So at the beginning of year, we see our students starting out at 6 or 7% and growing to that 86, 89, where in math, we see them starting at 20, 21% and growing much higher. And so the gap to close for math is much smaller, where the phonological awareness gap is so much larger.
And this is an area too where I would say these GPMs and, I would think this would be something we would look at annually. So if in a given year, we exceed our goal by 4 points, we're not gonna leave it a -3.
I know, I'm just not comfortable with like 86, 86, 87, 87, 88, I mean, it just.
86 is over.
Go ahead.
I think it's a pretty good goal, actually, because you're coming in, these have no background.
No, I know.
So you're starting everybody from scratch, and so the level of learning is gonna be different for each one, and we have no idea what that level is when they're
No,
in pre-K.
I understand that. I guess my point is that if we can't find a way to grow them faster and have more letter sounds by the time they get to kinder.
But we also have to think that we're in that by 2028, we're gonna have 1,400 seats compared to 1,000, so that's 400 new kids who have never been into
Okay.
Yeah,
school.
and we're also measuring students we have no control over. Idea, Third Future, they do their own thing. We calculate it, we count
They're
it,
included in
but we
this.
don't have any control over how they're preparing their pre-K
And
students.
as we build in new pre-K3 seats, that's why we're also kind of starting out a little slower and not hitting that 89 sooner, is because we're adding those pre-K3 seats, which will contribute
To
to
this number as
pre-K4.
well.
But we just don't currently have the space.
I see.
But with the new elementary school opening up and what have you, we can.
Mr. Hodges.
What was the number in 2022 and 2021?
For this GPM specifically, so students at the end of year in 2023 came in at 82%, and students in May of 2022 came in at 81%. And May of 2021, Katie, I think that was 81 as well.
But it wasn't just before.
Yes, and that was just letter sounds, that's right. So that historical context is different, that was a different.
It's also changing at what all we measure within
Yes.
that.
Well, so about a 5% differential between COVID kids and now, so we're trending right. So that's, okay. We're about 5% higher. Good.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
All right, so for GPM 1.2, this addresses our kinder through second grade growth in reading, utilizing NWA MAP as our assessment tool. Just as for some information in regards to the NWA MAP tool, that is a nationally normed assessment, and according to NWA typical systems, will grow about 50% of their students a year. That's a typical, and so you won't see on any of our GPMs that reference NWA MAP lower than 50%, and most of the time they're higher, like this one at 55. Also for reference, the Texas Education Agency does have the teacher incentive allotment where they can designate teachers as recognized as that lowest level. And the teacher incentive, or the TEA will designate a teacher as recognized if they have 55% of growth for their students. So that's kind of how we landed on that measure there. Moving into GPM 1.3, this is a new metric that we're proposing. Our K2 students are administered a test that measures their reading on or above grade level. That is the M-Class assessment, and so we are proposing that we report the data that we receive from M-Class. We currently have a baseline of 56, and we are proposing to move that figure to 70% by 2028. Mr. Hodges, did you have a question?
Brandon, did you have a question?
Oh, I thought I saw your hand.
No.
Now it's my peripheral vision.
Is the M-Class
Wasn't
through
as
the
good.
I-ready, or what is the M-Class?
Who wants to answer the M-Class?
Jennifer, M-Class is from the state, it's required by the state education agency, it's on the education commissioner's list of approved measures for our kids in kinder, first, and second. And they have different ones, but it's the one that's common between kinder, first, and second grade students. And that's why we use it, particularly because it's reported to the state.
Only those kids take the M class?
Yes,
Those grade levels?
And it
Okay.
is used as a dyslexia screener as well.
Okay.
that's part of House Bill.
We've always tested this or something.
No, we've always had it.
Now we're
Not
just
always,
adding-
always,
But we're just
but
adding it
in
as
the
a progress
recent
We
measure.
think it's another way to track how we're doing. So looking at multiple ways of looking at if students are,
So
if
let-
those leading indicators are gonna result in third grade hitting 55%.
So how many different assessments are we using to measure? We've got MAP, we've got this M class, we have the CLI Engage. There's 3 different assessments. How many are we using
CLI
a
is
year?
just for pre.
CLI is only pre-K.
Okay, that's just pre-K. So how many, I guess one of my questions is how many times are we testing them during the year for kinder through second?
That was my question.
Yeah.
Overall, as far as every
So
assessment.
Yeah, every
class-
assessment, because we give a lot.
Yeah, NWE MAP is beginning of year, middle of year, and end of year.
Yeah, I knew that, so there's
Class
three.
is the same.
In class
beginning
is
of
the
year.
same, and the state, gives us a list, and we have to use one of those. And those are it, other than,
So-
content driven.
And then they do practice stars, correct?
Not
Not
K
this
two.
Not K2, okay.
So do we feel comfortable with NWEA math, or do we feel more comfortable with M-Class? Because to me, it was like we're trying to validate one of those tests, maybe.
We want to use both. It's always great to have multiple measures when we're trying to see if we're on track to meeting that board goal. NWA MAP is, like I said, it's a nationally used test. There's millions of students that take that test for each administration, and so
Is MAP not a part of that list for the M class
it is not.
assessments?
There's 2. There's M-Class and Texkia.
Okay.
We use it.
So I do have a question on this GPM 1.2. If we're talking about 50% will exceed their individual growth goal, I mean, to me, that's where I like to see something higher, because we're talking.
50 is good. The lady from MAP was here, NWEA was here yesterday. You want to speak to
Friday,
that?
yeah.
On Friday.
And so, and I drilled her. And so a typical, well-functioning organization, 50% of their students will hit at that, meeting their growth goals. Because you have to understand that it's the individual growth goals. So some students start off higher, and then they have to meet their individual growth goal. So some start lower, they have to meet their growth goal. And again, even the state recognizes that 55% is a recognized level teacher.
Yeah. 50 is like the equivalent of a year's worth of growth. 60% is gap closing growth. So, if you're trying to close gaps, there are some campuses, we're looking for 60s. But a typical year of growth is 50% on MAP.
And we're talking about from beginning to end.
Correct. And we do assess that at winter as well, or the middle of year.
Yeah, they've gotten theirs back, yeah.
And that's where the GPM 1.4 drives. So we are proposing a slight change in GPM 1.4 is to measure or report out on the winter MAP
Because that really tells us where we are.
Projected proficiency, because that will help inform the third grade goal.
Right.
That is the overall board goal. Okay, any other questions on those? Oops, wrong direction.
Actually, I do have one on 1.4. On the 41 to 51%, because it says grade level, and demonstrate grade level mastery by scoring at the meets grade level performance or above. So are meets and mastery now combined, or are we combining those two categories to meet the overall KPI?
They are, if I understand your question correctly, they are combined, meets and masters. So and really how STAR works, if you make masters, you automatically also met meets.
Well, yeah, because you had to pass through that.
Exactly.
But so what are we doing to push those kids in mastery, and why are we using the mastery to be able to hit a KPI for meets?
So
Like
goal
we're
one-
padding that KPI is what we're doing.
So there's 3 performance levels that are passing on STAR: approaches, meets, and masters. And so we're looking at the meets level and masters level.
So on an individual student's math results, it shows this student is on track to meet on
Grade level.
STAR.
Yeah.
And so that's what this is
Yes.
looking at.
Yeah, I understand it, but
So
like,
it's-
what are we doing to push the kids who are, like, to push them further that are already past that?
So that, part of our growth goals, in the way that they're calculating growth now for the state, is that in order for a student to gain a point for the campus, for the district in growth, they have to maintain at masters. So they cannot, so we have, all of our students are bubble students, if you will. We cannot only focus on the students that are lower achieving. We have to focus on every student so that we can get those growth points, because they can't go backwards. Or
And I
we do not
think
get
you'll see
points.
that on GPM 3 and 4. when
So we
get
are
to 3
addressing
and
those
4.
kids, I guess.
Because 1 and 2 are about achievement, 3 and 4 are about growth.
But
So
you-
we're using the mastery to pad.
No, I don't think they are. I know what you're
They're
saying,
combined.
but that's because they count double when you've met and you mastered. I mean, the state counts them double.
Yeah, I'm talking about individual, like this.
I know, but this
student.
individual reading assessment, I see what you're saying, but I think that it's fair to count the kids who hit mastery, because they of course met.
Oh, I'm not saying not count them, I'm saying what are we doing to, once you hit that goal, right, and you're at masters, what are we doing to provide them an adequate and
To
fair
go forward.
education
That's
to
where,
move forward?
that's where goal
That's
3 and
goal
4.
3 and 4.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Let me ask you this, we, on our proposed goal from last year, what we had, we struck the language demonstrate grade level mastery by scoring at the score, because we said that wasn't clear, we wanted to change it, but we put that language back in this growth progress measure.
On the,
GPM 2.3.
but you're saying on the
One-
overall goal? So the
one
overall
and
goal looks at
1.4.
STAR, and the GPM looks at NWA map.
I think what he's saying though, the language, the grade level mastery by scoring at the meets grade level is what the old terminology
I see.
used, yeah. We could, good catch, Mr. Bowie.
You know,
Thank you.
Sorry, you're welcome. So on goal 2, which is very similar to goal 1, but instead of looking at the reading language arts, we're now looking at mathematics. So you'll notice that there are 3 GPMs here instead of 4. If you recall back on goal 1, we did propose to add a GPM for that M class. There is not an equivalent assessment for mathematics. And so we are proposing to keep the same GPMs that we had that were attributed to this goal prior to, just updating the annual targets. So the measure for 2.1, again, is that pre-K. You'll notice what Ms. Nussick was alluding to earlier. The students do come in with a higher knowledge of mathematics concepts, just because that is typical of what is accessed in the home prior to even coming to pre-K, lots of counting and what have you. And so that goal does start off higher and then progressing to that 94%. For GPM 2.2, again, updating our annual targets, keeping in mind what we talked about with GPM 1.2 in regards to what is typical for growth with the MAP assessment. 2.3 is our, similar to the reading language arts, and reporting at the winter to help inform how we'll perform on that actual board goal.
Let me ask you a question, just because it relates to what Mr. Hodges asked. On GPM 2.2 and I think 1.2 over here, we're talking about growth 50% for each student. So what if the student is at mastery and they're not gonna be able to grow 50%? Are teachers gonna be penalized for that? I mean,
No, the number, I think I can answer this because we get the MAP scores back. So your number is individualized, it's not using the meets and masters for your growth.
so
So
even
the
the
MAP,
master's kid can grow?
Yes.
yes, so like the max might be 240 on the points you can score on a certain section. And maybe you scored a 220 on the first one, and now you scored a 240 on the next one. Well, the only way, I mean, they'll still bump you up, your growth, you still have a smaller way to go once you get to the top, to the very top of the assessment, but you still have an individual growth, it's not meets or masters.
So it's from beginning of year to year?
Yes, and we do a middle of year.
And for example, at middle of year, there's 4 quadrants, so it'll show, for a parent, it'll show student had high achievement, low growth, high achievement, high growth, low achievement, high growth. You know, it puts them in those quadrants, and then it shows here was their baseline and here was their goal and what their actual was. So they exceeded their goal, didn't meet their goal, and then it will project based on this, here's what we think they're gonna do on STAR achievement. So it's measuring growth, but it projects, you know, how they'll perform on STAR from an achievement.
I guess because I never gave the map, but what is normal growth in that?
50%. Now, when a system has a lot more to grow, with really good systems, then gap closing growth is 60.
But if
Really
you're
anything
seeing
over
50,
That's good.
you're
That's
good.
good.
Yeah.
So when we think about the district, we're looking at that, we have some campuses that need to be above 50 to get where they need to be, and that's what our principal supervisors work on.
So it's not like answering one more question or two more
Correct.
questions, it's a different
Right.
type of
Yeah,
measurement.
the map, you can only answer 50% of the questions correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And the kids know what their growth number is.
Yes.
Or at least the ones that I've talked to understand it. They know if they achieve their growth, and they have been instructed on how that works for them.
And I was talking to one of our teachers walking into an event the other night, and I said, how's your year going? She said, I'm so excited, I'm having a great year. She said, she's a math teacher, elementary. She said, all but 10 of my students met their growth goal at mid-year.
Yeah,
So, you know,
it's
she was
huge.
excited and has a plan for those 10.
So one of the questions I have, I mean, I know we're as a group and as a team going over this, but how's this gonna be explained to the community on what we're seeing now, like the 50%? Because a lot of people might not understand this, well, they see 50%, so well, we're only doing half. They're gonna be asked the same type of
Only
questions.
50% can be great at
Yeah.
math.
Yeah.
So that.
Lindsay can think about how we do that.
I mean, I just,
It's explained on the sheet that comes home to parents, but I agree with you, the general public doesn't
Right.
understand what this
Right.
is.
There's a
Yes.
lot of people that don't.
And there are a lot of parents who get it and may not completely understand either.
And I know when I had my one-on-one with Dr. Howard, we talked about going out and presenting this to the community so they had a chance to ask questions about it. And so whether that's purple and maroon, how would we do that?
Right.
So,
We will definitely be ensured to include the language on anything that gets published so that it is more clear.
and then we could hold to just community meetings.
Because if you understand in your child's taken map, it's a lot easier to understand the growth goal.
Right.
But if you don't know what the assessment looks like or how it's scored and haven't seen one of the sheets that comes home,
Right.
it's really hard for the general public. But if we did have a community meeting or we did have an example go out to
Right.
families
Personal.
explaining what a growth goal is for an individualized assessment, then that helps. So they can see an example of one.
And does 2.3 need to be updated like 1.4?
Yes, yes.
So it
We're
needs
gonna
to be
update
updated.
1.4 and 2.3 to strike mastery. Yes, sir, thank you for catching that. Sorry, I wasn't picking up what you were putting down initially. Okay, so for goal 3, to Dr. Howard's point earlier, we are increasing the number of students that we are measuring with the overall goal. It used to say 4th through 8th grade, and now it says 4th through English 2. Prior to, there was only one goal progress measure for this particular goal, and it centered around 4th through 8th grade NWA math. And so what we're proposing is that we actually include individual grade levels as GPMs so that you all can monitor each of the grade levels as they contribute to that overall goal.
And I think, sorry, Ashley, it's important to point out here, I think we talked about it on goal 1 and 2, but so goal 3, the goal is to have annual growth according to how the state measures growth on STAR. When we talk about MAP, it's measuring growth based on how MAP measures growth. Those are two different things,
Yes.
two different metrics. But GPM 3.1 is a leading indicator of if we're going to get to that goal 3.
So each of the baselines for the individual GPMs are the percentages of students that met their projected growth for the fall of 2022 to the spring of 2023. So we took last year's MAP data as our baseline. And again, keeping in with what we previously mentioned, all of the GPMs for goal 3 and for 4 will be above that 50% for the NWA map. So I have several slides for goal 3. So for goal 3, we have a GPM for 4th grade, 5th grade, for 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, English 1, and English 2. So when you see the reporting calendar, in just a little while, it's included in this deck. You'll notice that on some of the months, there's a lot of GPMs that we'll be reporting, and that is simply because there are several GPMs, or several grade levels that contribute to this overall goal.
And I think it's important to point out, you see those going anywhere, 51 to 56, 48 to 53. 50 is good. And so as we get better across the organization, it's going to be harder to go above 50. Because that gap closing growth, it's easier to make that when a kiddo's struggling than when they start to get where they need to be. Then it's harder to make that growth every year.
What is genetic hardware? That's like the easiest example.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Are all of our goals above the state average?
Yes.
Well, there
Or
are ending wise.
They are, yeah, not at the start, but where we end in 2028, at or above state average.
That could be a moving target from the standpoint of the state.
Absolutely.
Every year.
Yes.
And so that makes me a little leery, so we're not voting on this tonight, because we're gonna talk about it more, right?
Next week.
Okay, because I think we've got to focus on the numbers, because I don't know that it's a great goal for us to be, and I know we're behind, and it's a stretch, but we can't be hitting this year's state goal in 5 years. We've got to be faster than that.
Exactly.
And so I think that's what you're pushing for.
That's what she pushed for on graduation. On the other areas, we've pushed beyond what the current.
Yeah, And if you-
graduation rate, there's just a lot of unknown right there, what the state's, what kind of.
And if you look at the current accountability, 71 is a B for an elementary. 68, 63 is a B, I'm talking about secondary, for a junior high, I think it's 68. And 74 is for high school, but there's a lot of other indicators, like CCMR, that contribute to high school A through F rating. The 71 is a B. Okay, so goal 4, again, very similar to goal 3, looking at the annual growth of students on the STAR assessment, 4th through Algebra 1. So we're looking at mathematics here. Again, breaking down each of the GPMs into the grade levels that contribute to that overall goal. So 4.1 is 4th grade, 4.2 is 5th grade, 4.3 is 6th grade, 4.4 7th grade, 4.5 8th grade, and 4.6 Algebra 1. Prior to, this was again just one GPM that looked at 4th through 8th grade NWA math results.
So on 4.2, we start so much lower with 5th grade. Why is that?
It's the baseline.
But I mean, we're at 55 and we said above 50 is a good growth goal.
Right.
And we're looking at 4.1, we're looking at going to 60. But then in 4.2, why is 5th grade 36 to
5th grade and 7th grade.
I mean, do we have any recognition as to why our baseline is so low in 5th and what we're working on here?
Elena, can you speak to that?
I would say because a lot of our stronger teachers are in the 4th grade. They're the MCLs, and they actually did test higher than the state on the STAR test. The 4th grader teachers did, and the students in 4th grade. And our 5th grade students, they were lower, a little bit lower than the state. So to me, I think that we have some of our stronger teachers in 4th grade.
But are we just like abandoning 5th grade? I just don't understand why we're starting so low.
Well, we're starting there because that was the baseline. That was the actual number.
Right.
That's the baseline for, say, 4.2, that's the baseline for this year's 5th graders? Because those
No,
are
they would
last
have
year's
been
4th
last
graders.
Yeah,
Right.
And this is where it gets
teachers
kind of
from
tricky,
that grade.
because that 36 baseline, if you look at that, those kiddos are now in 6th grade, and we're gonna ask that we get to 59 with them. So we either need to measure grade levels or cohorts.
What are we doing here? We're doing grade
This is
levels.
grade levels,
But it's hard to tell what's happening if we don't do cohorts.
cohorts. So we could rework GPMs to measure cohorts of
Because
students.
it's pretty
That's how
confusing.
you're
Like I
seeing
say,
it growth.
class,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then,
yeah, I think you almost have to look at cohorts because this doesn't make sense. I mean,
Well, if last year's 4th graders scored really
High.
high, we're lower in the bar for 5th grade.
yeah,
Right.
Is it, and I think Ms. Burleson
If they're
made a
coming
point.
in
She said
prepared.
5th grade, I guess, is a little bit harder.
It does, I mean, in 7th grade, there's a big dip, probably because of the transition part of it, but.
Well, every grade level has a different cut point to pass.
but it's even
I would
higher
love to do
seven.
cohorts, because then you actually can see
Right.
true growth, because
Right.
right now, we're comparing the group who's already gone.
Right,
So
10th grade to 5th grade, but different kiddos.
Well, in 7th grade, we don't even take the kind of hit that 5th grade took. I mean, we're starting at 44% to 50, and that's a very hard transitional year.
I had another reason, 5th grade is a difficult year because they introduced decimals and fractions. So they are doing all of the 4 operations with decimals and fractions, and that's the first time the students see that, so.
Well, I'm really bad at those too. I mean, that probably is the most convincing explanation.
So it is,
But-
5th grade is very difficult because it has decimals and fractions and whole numbers all with all 4 operations.
So I'll rework these, or our team will rework these for cohort, and then we'll get that out to you all so you can see the difference.
The difference, and then decide which one we prefer.
So you'll be able to line those up side by side and look at the cohort versus the other we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Well, does it make more sense to you guys to do cohort, or does it make more sense to do grade?
I always ask cohort questions. They were presenting on Monday something, I think, about what our third graders, I said, well, how did they do in second grade? Because what you're telling me about third grade means nothing unless I know what they did in second grade.
Right.
Right.
I mean, did we get way better, or should we be very concerned with this number?
Right.
So cohorts make sense, the state doesn't look at that. You know, when the state puts results out, we're looking at how do we do compared to the state. They're looking at fifth grade to fifth grade from year to year.
Not
So-
fifth grade to sixth.
Right.
But what I'm gathering,
But I think when we're trying to be better, when you look at the
You have to
same
know where
kids
fourth
year
grade
over
started
year.
before they went into
Right.
fifth grade.
but our goal would remain the same. Our GPMs would be the ones in
Right.
cohorts.
Correct, right. Because, you know, if we're looking at cohorts and they did much better than the year before, then things are looking good. If they're doing worse than the year before, why? Is it an instructional problem?
Well, I think
What's
then you
going on all of
could
a
find
sudden,
instructional problems.
students is struggling?
I mean,
We might be able to find the instructional problems.
Yeah, I think that definitely determines it. Which is how you see where you're not hitting. And you said we're gonna do these in February?
Well, the goal was for them to be approved next week, but we can approve them.
Yeah, I don't know if there's gonna be enough time. Is there gonna be enough time for you to get that back out to us to look at?
Yes, sir. They drink a lot of
Okay,
coffee.
we can,
If not, then that's-
Yeah, what we can do is bring them in March.
well, I mean, if we can get them now, and then that way if some more questions populate in between there, and then maybe look in March. I mean, if it's not gonna put any pushback on y'all to.
No, it won't be hard to run the data. Well, the only thing is, you know, we have a report next week for some of our GPMs. So we were gonna show side by side what it currently is and what this is. But we'll just be in a couple of months where we're reporting an old way, but we're really trying to measure a new way.
I mean, I think the rest of the board, I mean, I think it's good to see them, but maybe not do that approval maybe until March, and so if there's some more questions out there.
We could present it in the cohort way.
Yeah,
Yes,
Yeah.
and then, I mean, that way,
even though it's not
and
fully
then
approved.
wait to approve it in March.
Because that means more.
Yes. And then that way we also have the ability to test it and see it presented side by side, understand, is this the way we really want to measure this?
Right.
Because since I've been on the board, we've only done grade level to grade level, so
Yeah,
it'll be a new learning curve for me also to better understand what we're looking at too.
then that'd be a way too for the community to be able to see during the board meeting what's being presented. If there's some questions that are outlined for parents or community members, then that gives them an opportunity to ask those questions before it's approved at the March board meeting.
So can we put it out there for on the website, with maybe here's what we're looking at for
Proposing.
group, and then maybe a question and answer, kind of like what we talked about earlier about, here's why your 50% growth makes sense. You know,
I
so-
think if we're gonna ask for feedback, we should have a public meeting. People looking at this on a
They're
website.
not gonna
They're
understand.
not
it.
gonna understand it.
Yeah, I think it would be a public meeting and then ask for some feedback.
I think so too.
I appreciate you breaking them down by grade level, so.
So will we be able to do these
Yes,
public
ma'am.
meetings before the March
We'll,
board meeting?
we'll just have to look at the calendar.
Okay.
Katie's not going out of town for spring break, so she should be charging that one.
Yeah, right.
Well, she did a great job of explaining maps.
I hope that was
We're
okay.
gonna, but I do think showing a score report could be good
The
for the
score
community.
report just makes so much sense when you actually see it in hand and you have the opportunity to study it. You realize what they're talking about for your kid.
And it breaks it down by percentile, you know, your student outperforms 70% of other students.
Yeah, it's a great assessment. Of all the things that we use to test, I think MAP is the most productive in communicating to a parent and a child where they stand
Right.
so that they're not surprised on start day.
Right.
And I think by doing a couple words on this, we're still gonna track fourth graders through algebra one.
Right.
Okay, so that was goal 4.
Correct. So goal 3 was looking at reading, language arts. Goal 4 is looking at mathematics. Mr. Cedillo is going to take us through goal 5 and goal progress. He's hoping for fewer questions.
So
Give
goal
them all that
5,
now.
goal 5, the 4-year longitudinal graduation rate will increase from 86.8 to 90%, and you already touched on that you would like to see that higher. Looking at the GPM 5.1, first time Algebra 1 EOC testers, scoring at the meets grade level at or above will increase from 42% to 52% by 2028. We all know that Algebra 1 is one of those gatekeeper subjects, so it's important to track that, make sure kids are performing with the Algebra 1 EOC. So again, that's 42% to 52% by 2028. GPM 2, the percentage of students earning 6 or more credits by the end of the first year in high school will increase from 87 to 92% by 2028. Again, first time ninth graders earning 6 or more credits. We are on pace to meet that. We have some hiccups at this point, but we are looking pretty good. GPM 5.3, the percentage. Now this is different from the way it was previously. So in the previous GPM, had an accumulation of credits after their 10th grade. We've broken it up. So their 10th grade year, we want them to get 6 or more credits. So the way it was written previously, at the junior high level, they can earn 2 credits, 3 credits, and all that be accumulated by the end of their 10th grade year. So we're really looking at
Them
their
getting
10th
it
grade
under
year.
that sophomore year.
Due to the transition. So a lot of times when there's a transition, there's some challenges, new school, bigger school, different environment. So we want to make sure that kids are getting their six credits their sophomore year. Let's see. So any questions on goal 5?
I just have one quick question. I know that we want them at meets or above grade level, but approaches, is that also passing the test?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. It's
Just
passing.
want to clarify that.
Good job, Mr. Cedillo.
Your own question. You didn't want to talk.
He didn't want to say anything.
All right, goal 6, CCMR, the percentage of graduating class meeting 1 or more CCMR indicators will increase from 54% to 83% by 2028. Again, CCMRs, at the end of the day, is our ultimate goal is to make sure kids are graduating college and career ready. So with that, the GPMs, this is a challenging goal, just because a lot of things are changing with the IBCs. So if we're looking at goal progress measure number 6.1, the number of students that complete a program of study and earn an industry-based certification will increase from 14.5 to 28%. So the state made a lot of changes with the IBCs. So for example, a student could qualify for receiving an IBC by passing Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and receive their IBC. Well, the state has changed all that. It has taken that out of the equation. Now you have to go. I think it's one full year, 2 full year.
And then in the year 2025, you have to be a concentrator. So I'm going to get it wrong. You have to have two or more credits in that same program of study. And then in 2026, you have to be a completer. So you have to have at least, you've got to finish that program of study.
And I think it's important, and Mr. Cedillo may have said this, but you look at that and think, why only 28%? Well, there's multiple ways to be CCMR med, and CCMR is truly about every student is different. And so 100% of the students aren't going to earn an IBC because they're not even trying to earn an IBC. They're worried about their AP scores or something like that. And so when you see those lower numbers, it's because you're taking 100% of a class and trying to find which way is the right path for them to be college, career, or military ready. Not college, career, and military ready.
So in 2025, 2 or more courses for 2 credits in the program study. In 2026, it's 3 courses in that program study. So year to year, it's not comparing apples to apples. The IBC requirement is changing every year. So GPM 6.2, the number of students that meet TSI criteria on both reading and math, on SAT, ACT, TSI-2, College Bridge prep course will increase from 25.2 to 50% by 2028. Again, a lot of things are changing with this requirement. So for example, students used to be able to receive their TSI requirement by completing the College Bridge course or the College Prep course. No longer is that the case. They have to take the College Bridge course and take the TSI to pass it. Change the criteria is definitely raising. Anything to add to that, Mr. Warren?
Yes, you nailed it.
Let's see, the next one, 6.3, again, not comparing apples to apples. 6.3, the number of students that score a 3 or higher on AP exam will increase 15.6 to 22%. So that is more of an equal playing field year to year. 3 is a 3, it doesn't matter the year.
Well, and encouraging our kids to take the test. A lot of times they take the class and pick up the GPA weight, and then they don't take the course to get the credit.
And we're doing a lot of work around advanced academics and increasing the readiness of our students to be successful in AP courses and the assessment.
Okay.
So the one thing that'll help significantly is the policy that you guys approved tied to the GPA. So if they earn a 3, 4, 5 on an AP course, they get an enhanced bid on their GPA. So that's gonna drive a lot of students to do well on that AP test.
When you take the AP, do you have to pay for it, the test, the student?
We pay for it.
Well, we do pay for it, okay, because back in the day, you used to have to pay for it, so that's another impediment. Just want to make sure we're not doing that.
And we're also incentivizing teachers. So if their students, this was through the Education Foundation, if their students perform at a 4 or a 5, then they are getting a bonus. So incentivizing the teachers as well. Kind of like
We do
PIA.
do the students take the AP test, so if they're in the AP class, I thought that,
I thought that, we have a requirement that they take it, yes.
that's new when we were there.
Oh, that is?
Yes,
Okay.
they're required to take it.
Oh, I didn't know that. Thank you for clarifying
She
that.
just graduated in 2000.
Yeah, it's fairly recent.
I don't actually know.
That was the year.
There you go, that's a good guess.
Any
The
questions?
GPA will help probably.
That will.
Ask you one question on, just going back to the overall goal. We were at 54 last year, but we already know we made a big jump this year, right?
72.
So, but that's an actual number we already feel comfortable with?
It's a preliminary number, so it's not reported by the state yet, but we feel very confident in that number.
But one thing we talked about, because we talked about that, making a big jump is easier in year 1 than to repeat that in year 2. Once you make that big jump and put some things in place, you're gonna see incremental gains after that. And so, to expect 18 points a year is unrealistic.
No, yeah. So my question was gonna be are these 3 goal progress measures hard enough to get us from 72 to 78, 78 to 81?
Because they all converge to that.
Any other questions? Moving on to constraint number 1, my favorite constraint.
This one is written much better than the.
Well, since we're just having goals, GPMs, and progress or constraints, and we don't have to phrase it in a technical way, we tried to write it in a way that we can all understand and not double negative.
So professional learning communities will when done right, we'll move the needle quickly. So the superintendent shall require all campuses to fully implement professional learning communities. As far as the way it's CPM 1.1, we're looking at a refinement or 4 overall. We did have campuses report where they are. They just submitted that information. We haven't calculated it district-wide, but they just turned it in for the middle of the year reporting. So we'll do it again at the end of the year. We feel confident with this. We've done a lot of work with campuses to set their PLCs, set up their teachers up for success by allocating more time, adjusting the master schedule, to make sure that this process is working and moving forward. Constraint number 2.
This next one, you know, when you talk about a stretch goal, this is a stretch goal. But we feel like if we don't have this as a North Star goal, we're not pushing. And so you could read that right there, where right now we have 14% of our students in AB campuses.
Wow.
The accountability system lends itself to high schools, you know, not performing as well as elementaries, and, you know, a lot of our students sit in those high schools. And so this is definitely a stretch goal,
Yeah.
but we feel like it's the North Star goal that we set through the SGS system.
Well, if you have this as your North Star, you're gonna see the other ones come
Right.
behind it.
Right. Well, what we talk with our principal supervisors about all the time, B campus should be working to be an A C should be working to be a B, and you know, no one can sit and be comfortable because they're a B. They've got to be working to be
Well,
a
not
B.
even an 80, I mean, still should be looking to get better.
Sure, absolutely.
We have a few campuses that are on the cusp of earning that B, so I think we're well on our way to.
But that is by
Meet
far
these
a
targets.
stretch goal.
I like it.
Just a B, do we have final determination from the state what a B is this year?
They have not released officially.
That's what the B they gave.
They
you,
haven't
right?
released the
Be good and be
formulation for
steady.
this year's.
They've released the formulas, so we can run projections.
For this year, for 24.
Last year.
But I'm saying as we move forward, are
They've
we-
not released 24.
well, I knew that they hadn't released 23 because
Metrics.
of the lawsuit.
Yeah,
But we don't know what the metrics are gonna be for this current school year.
that's
They just met last month to take a look at them, and Dee shared with us this morning that they're looking at 2 pieces that they may potentially change in regard. One is looking at TELPUS and how that's calculated into accountability, but we do not have our 2024 accountability, 23-24 accountability numbers.
So how are we gonna have the same issue where we don't have any accountability because they didn't give it to us before the school year started?
We don't know. So we're bringing a resolution to you all next week. We didn't join the lawsuit because that's $30,000 but at the same time, we feel it's very important to have a fair accountability system. We are all for accountability, and I'll say that all day long, but you have to tell us the rules, give it to us up front, be fair about it, don't use it, you know, for political reasons. And so this resolution just says that we, as a board, if you approve that you're supporting fair accountability. It's in your board packet, you can look at it now. Because what some of the, you know, is being said in the lawsuit, well, only 10% of the districts across the state join the lawsuit. Yes, but that's 1.2 million students represented in that 10% of districts. And so the resolution allows districts like us to say, we're all for the idea behind the lawsuit. We just didn't want to put $30,000 out and be involved in it. We wanted to do the work that we thought we needed to do. So it basically says we're for it, but we want fair, we want timely
So, I mean,
accountability.
do we expect that we will get to a place where 23 is counted, or is it gonna be like another COVID year?
The commissioner
Or
spoke
24
last
as well.
week and didn't give any
Okay.
indication what was gonna happen.
Where did you get 14% as a baseline?
That's what we are right now.
Based on the 22.
22.
data.
these are under old metrics.
Well, the baseline's under an old metric. I think the assumption is that by 28 will be under the new metric. But we can't start anywhere other than.
I believe it was all 2023 projection, but let me check on that. Let me check.
Do we have anything for special needs, special ed? Because we talked about it a year ago, and that's about measuring it to show growth to those parents, and there's nothing in here about.
Special ed kids are in every one of those metrics.
But we had talked about last year as a board that we were gonna, like,
A specific
a
constraint
specific
or.
constraint or a specific goal for
I
it,
think-
and we'd all agreed to it last year.
We did do that, and I do think that the constraint could be a place where we identify and measure specific to special ed.
So you're talking about a constraint around special ed?
Potentially, if we don't wanna
progress
make it a
measure.
board goal, because we have 6 board goals, so I would understand why we don't want. But I know what Brandon is saying and what we talked about in the last board. Special ed is such a specific piece of the district, and while yes, it's included in these numbers, if we can't easily identify how we're serving those students at the district level, I think it's really hard to understand how we're doing for our special needs kids, because them being dumped in with the general population of all the campuses is very difficult to decipher where they stand and if they are growing and needing, because their needs are very specific. They're not the same as all of our.
Let's let Ashley work with the special ed team about what that would
If
look
there could
like.
be something specific
Right,
to
like
that
a GPMs,
piece.
and GPMs under
Maybe
each
that's
of
fit
the
in
grades.
somewhere, or just, but does it make sense why we would wanna look at
Well,
that specifically?
it does, but then it doesn't make sense, why wouldn't we look at bilingual ESL or emergent bilinguals, why wouldn't we look at
Right.
GT individually, why wouldn't we look at African American in particular?
Yeah.
So it's just a subtop of all of the subtops.
That's true.
You look and see if their IEPs are being followed, at least.
Well, that's a compliance piece.
So
Absolutely.
if we're compliant, then we broadcast it, celebrate it. That way the parents that are part of that population are happy with the district.
Let us work with the team and talk about what might be an appropriate thing to measure.
And there may not be a place specifically in this,
Percent
but,
of IEP.
but there's,
We have a cyclical on these audits.
Yeah.
yeah.
The state
We've had a year to work on it.
Well, I
She
think we've
wasn't
done
saying,
better.
she was saying we have those audits on an annual.
I don't, but
But
we
maybe-
specifically spoke to this, and we've had a year to figure it out, so this isn't new.
well, something we could do potentially, the way we talk about different departments, when we have
Well, that's-
department,
yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
reports, is do sub-pop,
Some data.
data for each specific group that we're, because I do agree, we need to be just as worried about GT as we are about ESL and, you know, those other groups that fall into different categories.
Yeah, and if you
Yeah.
look at this constraint right here,
That's
this,
it.
target for many of our campuses, the reason they're not A and B, or A or B, is because that domain 3 is killing them. That domain 3 is part of the subgroup. African American, Hispanic, white, special ed, ELLs. I mean, it counts every single subgroup.
You can look, you can figure out, there's a lot of very smart people that work for this district with a lot of sheepskin on their wall with a lot of experience. We've talked about this for a year, and there's been no movement on it for special education. Special education's been on fire for a very long time. We all know it, and we should address that and make sure that these parents are happy with it. And there's very simple ways that we could work on doing this by talking about IEPs. There is a way to thread that needle and make everyone happy on it, and it will help move the district forward, and it should be celebrated by the
You're
district.
speaking specifically to the IEP.
There's
Yeah.
no reason to debate it now, because I don't have all my information with me, but I'm just saying it's something that the district should look at and be able to provide.
We can work with our team on that because it could fall under graduation. I mean, everything goals 1 through 5, there's a special ed component to that.
Right.
Or we can look at what percent of IEP goals are in that, something. but let's let our
There's something to look at somewhere to figure out how to thread the needle. I mean, if we put footsteps on the moon, I think we can figure this out where it makes everybody happy.
I think I've appreciated doing department
Reports.
thank you. Because I think hearing from each department's important, that they're not set aside where you don't even think about it as a board.
And that might be the appropriate place to address it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Just bringing up, we just moved, like, we talked about, that's a long,
Yeah.
that's,
All right, so for constraint 3, we're proposing that we actually remove this
Strike it.
constraint because it is included in as a goal progress measure within goal 6. Okay? So, moving towards when would we report on these items? This is the current board reporting calendar of each of the goals and goal progress measures. We are proposing that we actually move to a reporting calendar that aligns with when we have the data, so it's more timely for when we report it to you all. In January is when we typically report the taper information, and so that's when we will have that final data for each of those goals, as well as GPM 6.2, which is included on the taper as well. And then February, as I mentioned, there are several months in which it looks like we have a lot of GPMs that we're going to be showing you, but if you recall, each of those GPMs was a grade level.
Right.
And so that's why it looks like, when we really did report that information to you all, within the one GPM. You do not see anything in April or December, and that simply is because there's no new data that would need to be reported to the board.
So now moving into the strategic plan,
Dr.
so.
Howard, can we take a 5-minute break,
Sure.
please?
I move to take a 5-minute break.
Oh, do you need to read?
We'll start back up at 7:21
Okay.
p.m.
So transition a little, so we have board goals, we have GPMs, and then we have a strategic plan. Well, a strategic plan is not written in a way typically to monitor numbers. We've put success metrics together. You've seen these before, so this isn't anything that we'll discuss a lot, but we wanted to kind of tie these two together. We had also talked about the importance of who owns those various success metrics and who's accountable for that work, if you will. And so when we think about our strategic plan, of course, we have the student experience, grow and develop staff, and engage and act. And then under student experience, there's actually 2 slides of various measures that will be monitoring. So if we do project X, we should see certain things happen. And if we're not seeing that happen, then we need to reevaluate project X because it's not working the way that it should. It may be a nice project, a fun project, it looks good, but it's not moving the needle. And so every project has one or more metric, and they're represented here. We have broken those down, showing you who owns those projects and then who's the cabinet member over that project.
But are these the same when they are the same as the GPM?
Yes.
When they're written? Okay, because like some of them aren't the same, we don't have a national merit one,
Correct.
but, okay.
Right, but where they are,
So where there is overlap, they are the same.
correct.
Got it. And how many of them do we know? I mean, have y'all gone through to see which ones overlap?
I haven't calculated
Okay.
that. I can.
But on this, for example, we're working on a scorecard that we give y'all a report every month for GPMs. We're doing quarterly strategic plan, but we'll be working on keeping this updated as a scorecard, if you will. So right now, the second one there, we have the kindergarten readiness, and the actual was 62, so we've already exceeded the goal of 60. And so, we'll be filling these numbers in as those data points are available. And each time when we have our strategic plan oversight committee, which is every 4 to 6 weeks, we have, 3 to 4 projects that come before us. They have to report out on their metrics, what they're seeing right now based on the work that they're doing. So the second page, or the second slide here, the one that we have to measure right here is 1,182 pre-K seats. That was actual as of when this was typed. That could have changed today or yesterday. But we have exceeded by 7 seats the number of pre-K seats we were trying to have this year. And then grow and develop staff. So these are metrics that, oh, I'm on your slide, you're supposed to do this. Do we keep going?
Yeah.
Do you answer questions? If you have questions, I'll defer to Robert. But these are, of course, we have internal metrics that we're gonna always be tracking, but these are more public facing. So teacher fill rate's been running around 96%, bus driver fill rate around
4 vacancies right now.
4, yeah, yeah,
For vacancies where?
bus
Do
driver.
y'all have a dashboard, like internally, that y'all look at that should just?
We're working on building that. There hasn't been one.
Do y'all have a project, like timeline on it, like when it'll be done?
Soon as reasonably possible. Yes. Everything that you're seeing here has been built in a year or less. If we think about, you know, where we are and revisiting the strategic plan and all of that implementation. But definitely working on a dashboard. There are vendors out there that do that work. But right.
Dashboard is an initiative, actually.
Yeah.
Part of the strategic plan.
Right. And then engage and act, so when we think about our community, the parent satisfaction, K-12 insight, so we have given that survey. We gave it at the end of last year, and then we gave it at the end of October. The goal was for 65% of our parents to say they were satisfied with opportunities to improve the school environment. The actual in October was 78%. So we saw some good gains there. Percent parent portal access, the goal this year is 92%, and right now we're at 90.7. So, you know, we can't force parents to get on parent portal, but we're working towards getting, you know, we're gonna try to get more on there than have been on there. But at the end of the day, that's a metric that if they decide they don't want it, then they aren't gonna sign up for it. And then the first rating, of course, is an 8. So that just helps kind of tie in. You know, many times a strategic plan gets launched and then everybody forgets about it. And so this strategic plan oversight process keeps it on the front burner, but also has metrics tied to it. So our project owners aren't just telling a project is going well, but the numbers aren't showing us that the project's going well. So that concludes our presentation for item 6.
All right, thank you, Dr. Howard. I'd like to say, thank you and your team for the work that y'all are doing, got done, and for bringing this to us. We know there's more work to be done, and I know that, like you said, y'all will get more together, be able to present, not only to the community, but bring more to the board. And then we'll look at that presentation on the board meeting day, and we'll look at the building in March.
We'll work on some dates.
Anybody else, any other board members have any questions or comments? We good? Thank you.
Please very much.
Okay, it is 7:27. We'll move to closed session under section 551.071 for the purpose of private consultation with board attorney on any of all subjects or matters authorized by law. Section 551.074 for the purpose of considering the appointment of employment evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, or to hear complaints or charges against a public officer or employee.
If you go to the board website.
All right, Mr. Bishop, go ahead.
Okay, are you ready? Is you ready?
We got one second.
Okay, it's 8:37. We are out of executive session. There was no business transacted in executive session. And we are to agenda item 8. There was no actions arising from the closed session. And,
I'm going to adjourn.
Ms. Joyner made the motion to adjourn. Mr. Booker, second. All those in favor by raising your right hand. It's 8:38 p.m. Thank you.
That's what I'm saying.
Once I realized we had to motion to adjourn, no one's beat me to it.
Get out of here.
Hell yeah.
David's gonna take that.